Xtalks connects professionals in the life science, medical device, and food industries with useful content like webinars, job openings, articles, and virtual meetings to help you succeed in your career. This life science focused podcast brings together some of our editorial staff to share insights into the latest B2B industry news to keep you up to date.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Vera Kovacevic, Editor-in-Chief at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm delighted to introduce a very special guest on the show. Today we have with us Amir Reichman, CEO of Scinai Immunotherapeutics, a biopharma company focused on developing, manufacturing, and commercializing innovative inflammation and immunology biological products, primarily for the treatment of autoimmune and infectious diseases. Amir will speak to us today about some of the company's work in the autoimmune and infectious disease space. So let's turn over to Amir Reichman. And welcome to the show, Amir. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here with you. And I'm delighted to be presenting Scinai Immunotherapeutics to our audience at Xtalks.
First of all, I wanted to ask you, can you give us an overview of the company and its core mission in the biopharma landscape?
Sure. So Scinai Immunotherapeutics is a NASDAQ-traded company under the symbol SCNI. We, as we said, are focused on developing, manufacturing, and commercializing innovative inflammation and immunology biological products for the treatment of autoimmune and infectious diseases. We operate with two business units, one an R&D business unit that develops our own pipeline, which is fully licensed from the highly prestiged research center or research institute of the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen, Germany, and the University Medical Center Göttingen, also in Germany. We have a pipeline of VHH-antibodies for the treatment that we develop for the treatment of these I&I indications. The other business unit that we have is a CDMO business unit, which provides contract development and manufacturing services to small early stage biotechs at preclinical and the early clinical stages. And there we leverage our very nicely built GMP grade manufacturing site, which meets EMA and FDA requirements, allowing them to put in one place development and manufacturing at the right conditions for the different preclinical and clinical trials that they have. Our core mission is to build a healthier and happier world by developing, manufacturing, and commercializing innovative I&I biological products, primarily for the treatment of autoimmune and infectious diseases.
Yeah, so speaking about the autoimmune and infectious disease markets, how is Scinai planning to address the unmet medical needs in those two areas?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are developing a pipeline based on VHH antibodies. VHH antibodies are called also nanobodies, and these are antibody fragments, variable fragments of heavy chain only antibodies produced from camelid animals. Namely, in our case, it's alpacas, but it can be done with llamas, alpacas, or camels. These are very small antibody fragments, about 1/10 of the size of the commercially available today monoclonal antibodies. Today, the monoclonal antibodies compose the majority of the blockbusters in any almost therapeutic area. Our strategy is to develop a bio-better. So what does it mean? We attack the same molecular target originally targeted by an already marketed monoclonal antibody, but where the currently market antibody cannot address all patient indications or patient populations. How do we do that? We basically take advantage of the unique physicochemical characteristics of these VHH antibody fragments to develop drugs that would be able to serve those segments currently underserved. So in general, we develop antibodies against molecular targets such as interleukin-17, which is now used for the treatment of psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, HS, interleukin-13, TSLP, and interleukin-4 receptor alpha, which are now used in the market for treatment of asthma and atopic dermatitis. and VEGF and angiopoietin-2 for macular degeneration. Take, for instance, the psoriasis. You have today 125 million patients, of them 15.7 in the 7 major markets, US, EU5, and Japan. 80 to 90% suffer from plaque psoriasis. The current biological therapies, the current monoclonal antibodies, are targeted only to the moderate and severe patients, but in fact, mostly are used by the severe, which compose about 22% of the patient populations. These drugs are administered systemically, means they go into the blood circulation, and mild patients that are currently not allowed to use these biologics are suffering from considerable and visible lesions, which may be uncomfortable, painful, and can also impact their social and mental well-being. While they can be regarded by the physician as a mild case, they're still ineligible for biological treatments. And moderate psoriatic patients that are eligible many times do not take the biological drugs, either for the costs or the side effects associated with these drugs. This is where we used the unique physicochemical properties of the antibodies that we develop, and we aspire to administer our nanobodies locally, something that monoclonal antibodies cannot be doing because of their size. Ours will travel across the skin. So in a way, we aspire to be the Botox-like solution for psoriatic patients. Imagine if psoriatic patients goes to the aesthetic center or dermatologist and then receiving small intradermal injections of less than 50 microliter each one, not painful, into the lesion. And then maybe after 1 or 2 treatments, they have a remission for at least few months, so that they do not get the systemic risks that are associated with biologics. It's not going to be anywhere close to the costs of biologics. So everybody is happy, and we actually expand the pie by using this technology.
Great. And just to clarify, when you say like expand the pie, do you mean that more patients, not just the ones with severe disease, can perhaps take the treatment?
Exactly.
Okay, great. And I wanted to ask you, like, what are the biggest challenges you face in developing the new nano antibodies, or in general, in your opinion, what are the challenges with developing biologics?
Yeah, so there are the general challenges, which are timelines and costs. So it takes time to develop a manufacturing process. But even before that, the discovery period takes time. So just to discover a novel antibody against a novel target takes approximately 7 years and up to $200 million. We basically shaved this risk and this timeline and costs because we went after a list of already validated molecular targets that we know that, if targeted by an antibody, will generate a clinical benefit to the patient. Why do we say that? Because we know that other monoclonal antibodies have already been registered and are nicely applied in the market. So even though we de-risked the project, and so we started, we kind of shaved about 7 years there, it still takes time to develop the manufacturing process, including all the analytical methods required to comply with the highest quality assurance requirements, and also preclinical studies and clinical studies until proof of concept in humans can take 2 to 3 years from project initiation at our technology. It then would take additional 3 to 4 years to launch a product from first in human POC until the product launch already available in the market. We also have specific challenges for this period, which reflect the current market conditions, because current interest rates are quite high. So investors are more reluctant in investing in risky assets that present a longer term ROI, even though the potential IRR can be very high. The risk associated with that, because of the number of years they need to wait, presents their risk, and then that brings a challenge to entrepreneurs and startups when they want to invest in R&D with long-term results.
Yeah. In my work, since I'm a journalist, I did write about how in general, the whole like biotech IPO market is lower than usual. So we've heard about that too.
Right. So I want maybe to take an advantage here and mention two things. One, we do see now an improvement in the capital market. So every week we see more and more deals, let them be acquisitions, follow-on offerings, IPOs. So we see an increasing sentiment towards, or a positive sentiment against towards biotech. I think the horizon looks at interest rate reduction in the future. So people are starting to build their positions toward that. And then the other thing that we're doing, we basically opened a CDMO business unit, and the CDMO business unit serves several purposes. One, it generates cash, which allows us to absorb our fixed costs. So we already have the manufacturing site, which is a unique value proposition for a small preclinical biotech. We inherited it from a previous company that we restructured, which was called BeyondVax, that developed influenza vaccine. This company did tremendously well until phase 3, but unfortunately the product failed to meet primary endpoints. And so what we inherited was a site. It's a highly designed site, brand new, with all the capabilities for clinical manufacturing, laboratories. We have 20,000 square foot of laboratories and clean rooms. And so instead of having them idle now until we are in the clinics, we are offering our capabilities because everything is in place. The quality management systems are in place, the equipment and the SOPs, etc. And so there we can actually generate value to other biotechs. We flex our muscle in drug development, and we generate cash to absorb the fixed costs. And that allows us to increase our runway for every dollar invested by our investors for the R&D pipeline.
Speaking about other challenges, I was also going to ask, how is Scinai navigating the very complex regulatory environment, especially concerning FDA and EMA guidelines?
Yeah, so we are working with regulatory experts. We are working with people that have been either holding roles in these agencies or with firms that employ such people, so that we can get the most current advice. We have, of course, our internal people up to date with all the requirements. We take, of course, consultation and advice from the local Ministry of Health, which is considered a QP fully approved by the EMA, European Medicinal Agency. So we know whatever they say is probably going to be eligible, basically the same like EMA. And we are constantly taking advice from the Paul Ehrlich Institute, who is the well-regarded regulatory agency of Germany. And so because our drugs are in-licensed from a German research institute, and we have good relations with the PI, and one can sign for scientific advice with the PI, and usually if you comply or follow the advice of the PI, your chances of passing an IMPD with EMA are quite high, and that also allows you to get prepared for the pre-IND meeting with FDA, because usually if you go for the FDA pre-IND, you can't really have two, so you need to be really sharp and ready for the first one. So that's how we take advantage.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the company's growth vision? How many employees approximately work at Scinai right now, and what is Scinai Immunotherapeutics' approach to growing and scaling its operations?
Sure. So we have about 30 employees now. Some of them are scientists who work in the R&D arm, and some of them are engineers and technicians who work on the CDMO arm. The CDMO arm can grow significantly up to about 90 employees, depending on demand, right? So the more, and now, knock on wood, we have very nice demand and we're growing constantly. So we hope to see by the end of 2024 a nice, record of revenues for the CDMO, and if we are able to generate nice growth curve into 2025, we'll be able to scale up to 90 employees, and these can generate easily up to $12 million a year in incoming revenues for the CDMO. If we double sorry, for we can do the 12 million with up to 50. If we double the employees almost up to 90, we can generate up to 25 million in top line revenues. And so, but again, it all depends on demand, and we are now working very hard on establishing the demand by investing in sales, marketing, and business development for the CDMO. For the R&D arm, our strategy is to team up with partners, a pharmaceutical partner. The main reason for that is the main market for biologics, specifically in I&I, is the United States. So, for example, as I mentioned in psoriasis, let's say the 7 major markets, they have 15.7 million people. 7.5 million of them are in the United States. However, sales-wise, United States account for 82% of the sales, and so dollar-wise, right? So one should really focus on the United States, where the majority of the business is. Now, we're a startup company, and we don't want to take risks with regard to perfect launch in the United States. To do a perfect launch in the United States, one need to team up with a company that has the capabilities to do a launch in the United States, including sales, marketing, distribution, commercial manufacturing at FDA standards, etc. So our aspiration is to find the right partner when the time comes, either after preclinical proof of concept in animals or after proof of concept in human beings. And at that point, we will probably do an out licensing specifically for the United States for sure. And about Europe, we'll have to see whether we keep Europe for ourselves and manufacture through CMO, or we out license also for US. This is going to be the same for the rest of the pipeline, but gradually, once we start to get more and more non-dilutive cash, we will aspire, of course, to grow and invest in our own manufacturing facility so that we can capture some of the manufacturing and sales by ourselves. But that's more like down the road. So that's basically the strategy for us and how to approach the market and to market entrance with our drugs.
Great. And I wanted to go back to talking a little bit more about the inflammation and immunology sector. Was wondering, in your opinion, what are the most significant trends in those two disease areas currently? And does Scinai's approach align or perhaps differ with those industry trends?
Right. So we see, first of all, a high attractiveness in this area because in the past 20 years, monoclonal antibodies were mainly used for treatment of chronic disease that would be regarded as also, like the cancer, So oncology was the main target for mAbs. In recent years, we saw more and more I&I indications receiving monoclonal antibodies. Now, when someone treats an oncology target with a monoclonal antibody, you can use a very potent monoclonal antibody, and you should not be too concerned about, for example, an antibody drug reaction from the patient or about potential side effects, because in the end, the regulator and the patient and the physician will always look at the benefit versus the cost and the risks. And so when you have someone that has cancer, everybody will be willing to take higher risks. When you're talking about an I&I indication, you're talking about a patient that needs to take the drug for life. So somebody will be, diagnosed at 35, 40, and then she'll have to take the drug until she's 85 or 90. And that's a little bit becoming non-sustainable because of the cost, because of the long-term exposure to biologic drugs, because of the body's ability to generate resistance, because of different side effects like suicidal thoughts, obesity, heart issues, etc. So we see a trend in the market of I&I for either basically moving to small molecules like JAK inhibitors and TYK2, etc. But what I think the market is currently missing is they all go after the severe patients and the moderate to severe in the best case. But that's basically making all this environment very, very condensed and highly competitive. And if you look at the market researches from recent publications, you will see that the massive unmet need is still stays with the mild patients who just receive very generic drugs that haven't seen any innovation in the past 25 years. It's true for asthma, it's true for psoriasis, it's true for atopic dermatitis. And there, biologics don't really go. And the big advantage of biologics is the specificity. So even the best, pills that are now developed, they're not super specific, and they can get attached to other targets in the body, not related specifically to the disease itself, and then generate side effects. Or if you do it in too low of a dose, the efficacy is harmed. So in the end, the efficacy and specificity of biologics is uncomparable. So you can't really, you cannot beat it. And so by developing and locally administered antibody that can be generating the same efficacy and specificity of a mAb, but without the systemic exposure, you are generating a new market here. And that's what we're trying to do.
And as CEO, what is your strategic vision for Scinai in the next 5 years, particularly in the field of inflammation and immunology?
Sure. So I'd like in the next 5 years to be already in phase 3 for psoriasis. I'd like us to continue and develop the drugs for asthma and atopic dermatitis. We would like to be at that point in about phase 2. And we'd like to further in-license additionally NanoAbs for additional indications. I'd like also to see the CDMO business grow. So that we can start to become almost independent in the way we generate cash and invest in our own R&D. And then I'd like to have a couple of contracts with large and medium-sized pharma companies that will partner with us to develop together the parts of our pipeline. That's very important for us because it provides validation of our scientific thinking about the favorability of our strategy. It also provides with certainty around future ability to launch our product and supply them. And last, it provides non-dilutive cash, which is important to further propel the company and to support our R&D expansion.
And how will you foster a culture of innovation and excellence within Scinai?
Yeah, that's something that we do from day one. I think the challenge that we have now is to make sure that we, on one hand, focus on innovation and research and drug development, but on the other hand, that we are very focused on customer service and on operational excellence. In the end, these two things do not contradict each other. I think one of the things that can be a trap for an R&D company is that we become complacent with losing time because there is no true pressure here. When we have a CDMO, we have a client that we committed a timeline for, and now that you start to develop this kind of operational excellence culture, quality above everything, the safety, it becomes very disciplined work and very high pride in very structured and timely deliverables. Then it really starts to propel. We see that actually impacting our R&D work because it becomes very fast and focused and prioritized. So it actually feeds each other and it helps in fostering this culture.
Well, thank you very much, Amir, for being on the show today. I greatly appreciate your time for the insightful discussion.
Thank you very much for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for Xtalks as well, and thank you for you, Vera.
Thanks for listening to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. If you enjoyed our discussions today, please share the episode with your friends and colleagues, and be sure to subscribe in order to be notified when a new episode is released. To join in on the discussion, you can find Xtalks on social media, email podcast@xtalks.com, or comment on the articles directly. Links are in the show description. Take a moment to join our community at Xtalks.com to get access to everything we have to offer, including webinars, job listings, virtual meetings, articles, and more. The views and opinions expressed in the podcast are those of the speakers sharing them. They should not be taken as professional advice and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.